Every knockout in history, every fighter who hit the canvas, every street fight that ended in 3 seconds, even every person who fell asleep in the middle of a sentence. It all happened at one of 8 specific coordinates on the human body. It is not random, it is not luck. It is pure, raw biology. Today, we are mapping all 8 of these points. We will explain exactly what happens inside the nervous system when a blow lands on each one. And we will count down to the most dangerous knockout point the human body possesses, the #1 spot that is illegal in every combat sport on the planet. Stay until the very end. Point 8. Solar plexus, celiac plexus, sun nerve network. The solar plexus is not a bone or a muscle. It is a dense network of nerve ganglia, the celiac plexus, located directly behind the stomach, just below the sternum. It sits completely unprotected behind a wall of muscle that a focused strike passes straight through. The mechanism. When it receives a direct strike, it doesn't just send a simple pain signal to the brain. It sends a fatal system command. The diaphragm, the dome-shaped muscle responsible for every single breath the human body takes, simultaneously receives an involuntary spasm signal and locks up. The result? Breathing becomes physically impossible. Not difficult, impossible. The lungs cannot expand and the oxygen supply is cut off. Deprived of fresh oxygen, the brain responds the only way it can. It shuts down non-essential functions and drops the person to the ground. This is why a clean body shot in boxing causes a delayed collapse. The fighter looks functional for 2 to 4 seconds, then collapses without warning the moment the processing delay of the nervous system ends. How it works: a punch, front kick, or knee strike delivered just below the breastbone at a slight upward angle penetrates the abdominal wall and reaches the celiac plexus. Precision is far more important than power. The diaphragm handles the rest automatically. Point 7, brachial plexus, before explaining what this point does. We need to correct a massive myth written all over the internet. The brachial plexus is constantly exaggerated as a knockout point. It is not. This is not a knockout point. It is a stunning point, and this distinction is vital. The mechanism. This network, extending from the cervical spine along the neck and into the shoulder, carries every motor and sensory signal between the brain and the arm. It is located in a pocket between the neck, the trapezius muscle, and the top of the shoulder, surrounded by muscles and bones that absorb and redirect force. The result: a direct and focused strike here, such as a downward knife hand, backhand, or a hard thumb strike, creates an intense numbing sensation throughout the entire arm. Motor control decreases, grip strength is lost, and the shoulder stops responding for a few seconds. However, consciousness remains unaffected. The person is still standing, still fighting, and now they are furious. How it works: strike into the gap between the neck and the trapezius muscle with a knife hand motion. Use this not to finish the fight, but to temporarily neutralize the arm during a clinch or grapple to buy enough time for your next move. Point 6, mastoid process, behind the ear. Just behind the ear lies a dense bony prominence called the mastoid process. Most people assume the thick sternocleidomastoid muscle protects it, but this muscle attaches below the mastoid. The mastoid process itself, located right behind the earlobe, is covered only by thin skin. The mechanism. The underlying petrous bone houses the inner ear, the cochlea, and the vestibular apparatus. 2 cranial nerves directly connected to the brainstem exit the skull here. A sharp and focused blow transmits a concussive force through the thin outer bone, simultaneously disrupting the vestibular system and sending a shockwave to the brainstem. The result: the inner ear controls every aspect of spatial orientation and balance. When it receives sudden trauma, both functions cease instantly. The result is not a fighter who slowly falls down, but a body whose legs completely stop working as a single unit. The difference from the jaw: fighters who can take chin shots right to the jaw collapse from a mastoid blow because the mechanism is completely different. The jaw requires rotational brain trauma. The mastoid requires direct vestibular failure. A fighter who trains their jaw cannot train their inner ear. Point 5, carotid sinus on both sides of the neck. Right below the angle of the jaw, where the carotid artery bifurcates, lies a small cluster of specialized pressure sensors called the carotid sinus baroreceptors. The mechanism. These sensors have a single function: to monitor blood pressure and constantly report it to the brainstem. This mechanism cannot distinguish between actual high blood pressure and external mechanical pressure applied from outside the artery wall. When a strike or pressure is applied from the outside, the baroreceptors send a false emergency signal to the brain. The result: the brainstem instantly triggers a full vagal cascade by lowering the heart rate and dilating the blood vessels. Blood pressure drops, the brain receives insufficient blood flow, and consciousness vanishes within seconds. This is not concussive trauma. It is a drop in blood pressure triggered by the body's own regulatory system turning against itself. How it works: blood chokes in grappling, rear naked choke, guillotine triangle work not by restricting the airway, but by compressing the carotid sinus bilaterally, causing unconsciousness in 8 to 13 seconds. Because no brain trauma occurs, recovery is rapid. Point 4. The liver. The liver is located on the right side of the torso, just below the lower ribs. Those floating ribs, which have no anterior connection, provide almost no protection against lateral or upward force. The mechanism: it is supplied by the hepatic nerve plexus, one of the most pain-sensitive networks in the abdominal cavity, which connects directly to the vagus nerve. A well-placed strike here does not cause ordinary localized pain. It sends a massive neurological shockwave that the autonomic nervous system interprets as a catastrophic internal event. The result: heart rate drops, blood pressure decreases, and voluntary muscle control in the legs is completely withdrawn. The fighter remains upright for a split second, their face turning not to pain, but to utter confusion as they realize their legs are no longer taking commands. Then, they collapse uncontrollably onto their knees. The reality: the liver cannot be conditioned. No amount of training, core workouts, or athletic development can alter the liver nerve's response to this compression trauma. A fighter with 20 years of experience drops from a clean liver shot just like a novice. Biology does not negotiate. A left hook or a left body kick bypassing the floating rib guard lands right here. When it does, the result is undeniable. Point 3. The temple, pterion, located between the eye and the ear where 4 skull bones fuse. The skull thins down to a mere 2 to 4 millimeter. Directly beneath it runs the middle meningeal artery, which supplies the protective membrane of the brain. The mechanism: a blow to this area transmits force to the temporal lobe with almost no bone resistance to absorb it, simultaneously creating rotational brain trauma. Compared to any other point on the skull, far less force is required to produce a knockout here. The result: this region carries a dangerous risk profile that extends far beyond a simple knockout. It is the epicenter of the documented talk and die syndrome, where a fighter regains consciousness after the blow, appears functional, and then rapidly deteriorates as blood pools between the skull and the brain. Point 1. Base of the brain. Stem, while every other point on this list affects the brain indirectly. This is the only point that directly targets the brain's control infrastructure. It directly governs respiration, heart rate, and consciousness. The mechanism. Located at the base of the skull where the bone is at its thinnest, the distance from the outer surface to the underlying nerve tissue is virtually zero. Trauma generated here produces consequences that cannot be controlled by the person delivering the force. The result: at best, it causes a severe knockout and respiratory depression. At worst, it results in permanent brainstem damage or instant death. A fighter struck here does not always wake back up within a few seconds. This is why this blow, known in the boxing world as the rabbit punch, carries heavy criminal liability when it results in death and is strictly banned in all combat sports. 8 points, all completely biological. Every single blackout you have ever watched occurred at one of these coordinates. There are not infinite ways for the body to lose consciousness. There are only 8, and now you know them all. If you want to go deeper, gain full detailed knowledge, and learn the complete protocols and practical applications, everything is waiting for you in All-Inclusive.